This is the fourth and last in a series of lessons about the apostrophe in English. We will first consider the semantics of the possessive apostrophe and then look at some special issues concerning its use. The possessive apostrophe is so called because it most commonly indicates a possessive or having relationship. So, for example, London possesses or has buses, and Mary possesses or has a dog. But the relationship between two nouns as shown by an apostrophe is not always a possessing or having relationship. For example, Shakespeare's plays are written by Shakespeare. It makes little sense to say that Shakespeare possesses or has plays in the way that London possesses or has buses. Similarly, in the possessive phrase Mona Lisa's portrait, Mona Lisa does not possess a portrait. She does not have it. It is a portrait of her. Here are some of the other types of relationship shown by the possessive apostrophe. Human relationships, characteristics, evaluations, measures, and partitives. Because many uses of the possessive apostrophe do not involve possession, modern grammarians tend to use the word genitive to denote such relationships. Native speakers or learners of languages such as German and Russian will be familiar with the term, as will learners of Latin. Note that this use of the genitive in English is also called the Saxon genitive. Knowing this may help in your research if you have questions about the correct use of the apostrophe in any given context. Mary's dog. In this common use of the genitive to show possession, the apostrophe is located in the single possessive noun Mary. But this principle does not apply to what is often called the group genitive. Here's an example. The boy who lives next door's cat. Obviously the cat does not belong to the door, it belongs to the boy. The word boy is the head of the post-modified noun phrase, the boy who lives next door. And the boy is the possessor of the cat. But the apostrophe goes on the last word of the noun phrase, door. Here is an authentic and extreme example of a group genitive. He is the woman who is the best friend this club has ever had's husband. Google it. Long group genitives can work well enough in spoken English where prosody can aid comprehension. But in general, it's best to avoid long group genitives in writing. You can use an of expression instead. Here is a revised version. He is the husband of the woman who is the best friend this club has ever had. Now let's consider the problem of genitive ambiguity, using Mona Lisa's portrait as a first example. Genitive ambiguity is what we have when it's not clear if the apostrophed noun is the subjective genitive or the objective genitive. If you hear someone in the Louvre say, "There's Mona Lisa's portrait," you would correctly infer that they are pointing to the portrait of Mona Lisa, not pointing to a portrait painted by Mona Lisa or at a portrait belonging to Mona Lisa. Only someone who'd never heard of the Mona Lisa would find the statement ambiguous. But in certain contexts there is more likelihood of ambiguity. For example, imagine John is telling you about an online collection of photos by and of various mutual friends. How would you interpret John's claim that Sally's photo was very good? If the photo that John was thinking about is the one shown here, and the girl in the photograph is Sally, then it's pretty clear that he meant the photo of Sally was very good. If, on the other hand, Sally was a photographer and the photo John was thinking of was the winter scene, then John clearly meant the photo taken by Sally was very good. These alternative interpretations can be classified as the subjective genitive and the objective genitive. The subjective genitive and objective genitive designations are based on the fact that Sally is the photographer in the first interpretation of the original sentence, and in the second interpretation she is the photographed. Here is another ambiguous genitive. Did you hear about John's appointment? It could refer to someone whom John appointed, or to the appointment of John by someone. The best advice on this issue is to be alert to the potential ambiguity of the genitive apostrophe, particularly the objective genitive. You can usually preclude misinterpretation by replacing the objective genitive with the of alternative, as in this example. Quiz page. Pause the video if you want to review the questions and answers before continuing. Next topic. Partitive is the term for a two-noun phrase in which one noun is part of the other. Most commonly, the two nouns are joined by the preposition of. For example, a slice of bread, a blade of grass, the door of a car. In theory, an of partitive can be replaced by a genitive containing an apostrophe. But in practice, some partitive genitives are less acceptable than others. For example, the bread slice sounds less natural than the car's door. And I suspect that most native speakers would find my door's key a lot less natural than the computer's keyboard. In fact, there is a third alternative. In many cases, you can dispense with of or the genitive apostrophe altogether, as in the three checked phrases here. Many, maybe most, native speakers will intuitively prefer the car door, my door key, and the computer keyboard to their alternative partitive versions. This is a tricky grammatical issue. If you are unsure which partitive alternative is the best in a given context, you are recommended to ask for help on a good grammar Q&A site, such as English Language Learners. You can also send me an email via the site contact page. The final issue to be covered here is the omission of the apostrophe in a fused participle. Before discussing what a fused participle is, let's look at two equivalent sentences with pronouns. I was annoyed by his arriving late, and I was annoyed by him arriving late. Which would you say is correct? Grammar purists will say the first sentence is correct. The second sentence is said to be wrong because it is not permissible to fuse an object pronoun, him, with a participle, arriving. Now let's replace the red pronouns with nouns and ask the question again. Which would you say is correct? I was annoyed by my friends arriving late again? Or I was annoyed by my friend arriving late again? As you might suspect, purists maintain that the first sentence has the correct form since it uses the possessive noun friends followed by the gerund. The second sentence, on the other hand, contains the unacceptable fusion of the object noun my friend with the participle arriving. The purist may have a case, but in modern English the fused participle is in common usage. And some people might consider the non-fused construction odd or simply very formal. For this reason, I've marked both forms as correct. There are some rare occasions when the use of the fused participle, as exemplified by the red words in the first sentence, can be ambiguous. Strictly speaking, the decontextualized sentence, I dislike the boy standing under the streetlight, could mean either that I dislike the boy who is standing under the streetlight, or I dislike the fact that he is standing there. With the possessive apostrophe s, namely, I dislike the boy standing under the streetlight, it is clear that the second reading is intended. The Right Word at the Right Time has a good discussion of this topic. It concludes that it is better to side with the purists, in formal contexts at least, and use the possessive form. Here are the two possessive forms again. Quiz page. Pause the video if you want to review the questions and answers before continuing. Okay, you've come to the end of this lesson on the semantics of the grammatical possessive and on some of the special issues concerning its use. Here is a summary. In the description below this video, you will find a link to the lesson index page shown on the left. As you can see, there are 4 ways to access the content, as well as a glossary and links to quizzes and more information on the topic.